Ahoy there, and welcome to the Eerieworm Horror Music Podcast, where we dive into the creepiest tunes from video games and movies that keep us all awake at night. It's great to have you here, and if this is your first time listening, prepare yourself for a stormy journey as we explore the stories, sounds, and mysteries that will hopefully keep you hooked. Today, we're embarking on a nautical nightmare. We're talking ghost ships, mysterious distress calls, and the unnerving soundtrack of Man of Medan. Grab your life jackets, folks, because today we're going deep, right into the cold, dark waters of maritime horror. Just a quick reminder, all of the tracks I mentioned in today's episode are linked in the episode notes. So if you want to listen to these spooky tunes for yourself, and trust me, you do, go check them out. The boring copyright police won't let me put snippets of the music into the podcast, so for now, the best thing I can do is send you straight to the tracks online. There's something about experiencing these eerie melodies firsthand that adds a whole other level to understanding the themes we're discussing today.
And subscribe. We've been trapped on a ship for ages, but we still know how this works. Smash that like button.
You heard them. Ghost approved. Join the crew and let's navigate these dark waters together. So the story of the SS Ourang Medan has everything a horror fan could want. Mystery, terror, and an eeriness that lingers long after you hear it. So let's paint that picture for you. It's the 1940s, the Second World War is over, and the world is shrouded in a mix of hope and tension. The oceans are bustling with renewed activity as global trade resumes, and the merchant ships are crisscrossing the high seas. Amidst this post-war backdrop, you're a sailor, perhaps working for a merchant navy, doing your best to get by. Imagine it, it's hot, the sea stretches endlessly around you, and you're somewhere near the island of Sumatra. The tropical sun mercilessly beats down on you. Suddenly, your radio crackles to life. A distress signal comes through. It's from a ship called the SS Ourang Medan. Now, distress calls are not something to look forward to. They often mean danger, chaos, and quite a lot of heartbreak. But this one is pretty grim by anyone's standards. The message that comes through is fragmented and cryptic.
All officers, including captain, are dead. Probably whole crew dead. I die.
And then silence. The airwaves go dead. A rescue crew is dispatched to investigate. They sail towards the coordinates, hoping to find survivors, or at least to bring the ship to safety. The location points them to a vessel drifting aimlessly near the Strait of Malacca, a notorious stretch of water that has a long history of mysterious disappearances and piracy. The rescue crew finally spots the Ourang Medan. It's drifting in the current, eerily silent, with no signs of life. They board the ship, but find the entire crew is dead. Bodies scattered across the deck and in the cabins. They're frozen in grotesque poses, mouths agape, eyes wide with terror, limbs twisted as if they'd been trying to fight off something invisible, as if they'd seen something so horrifying that it literally scared them to death. And then, as if the story couldn't get any weirder, the ship bursts into flames. The rescuers barely have time to get off before the vessel sinks beneath the waves, taking whatever secrets it held to a watery grave. And this is what makes the story so compelling, is the inherent mystery, the lack of a logical explanation, the eerie circumstances, the vanishing of the ship. This bizarre, allegedly true tale is what inspired Man of Medan from the Dark Pictures anthology, which was developed by Supermassive Games. It's a game that's pretty much a one-way cruise to the land of nope. But it's not just the history of the Ourang Medan that does the heavy lifting, it's also the soundtrack that really brings this horror story to life. Composer Jason Graves is an expert at getting under our skin. If you're familiar with his other work, you'll know he's got quite the horror pedigree, with credits like Until Dawn, The Devil in Me, Dead Space, and most recently, Still Wakes the Deep. Today we're going to break down some of the stand-up music that elevates Man of Medan from a spooky game to a full-on panic attack-inducing experience. So first up, let's talk about the track Ghost Ship. This track is all about setting the scene. Imagine a ship lost at sea, rusting away while the waves gently remind it that no one's getting out of here alive. The track starts with a low, ominous drone, the kind of sound that almost feels like it's resonating from the bones of the ship. As the strings kick in, they don't enter gently. They slide into place with a foreboding sense of grandeur. The atonality of the strings adds a level of unease that never quite resolves, and that's a common thing in video games. Instead of the comforting cadence our brains crave, the music leaves you hanging, constantly on edge, and it's almost like the ship itself knows its curse and wants you to share in that curse. A feeling of being alone, adrift, and pretty vulnerable. As the strings swell, they introduce a distinct sense of musical anxiety, and it feels like the ship is waking up, like it's aware of you, and it really doesn't want you to be there. It's a classic Jason Graves composition embodying the ship, its dark history, and the souls that never left. Moving on to the next track, There's a Storm Coming. It uses all of the orchestral tools at the composer's disposal to create a continuous sense of terror. It leans heavily on chaotic elements, layering them together to give you the sensation of being in the midst of a violent storm, and definitely one that's beyond your control. There's a pretty heavy use of unpredictable dynamics, which is what makes this track so effective. The music ebbs and flows just like a real storm, with real shifts in intensity, and this makes you feel like you're being tossed around with no actual stable ground to hold on to. You could argue it's not just a literal storm, but also being an emotional one, a representation of the panic and fear the characters are feeling as they fight to survive. And I think at this point we'll just dip our toes again into the psychology of horror soundtracks. There's a Storm Coming is quite a good example of how music can create tension by refusing to give us what we want. Our brains crave patterns, and we usually really like predictability, and that's why a catchy pop song is pretty satisfying. But horror music deliberately denies us that. The rhythms are often erratic, the harmony is discordant, and the dynamics shift without warning. It's like being stuck in a room with a ticking time bomb, except that timer is saying, "I'll go off when I bloody want to." This unpredictability taps into our natural fight or flight response. The sudden changes in volume and intensity make our bodies react as if we're in danger. This musical experience aligns with the real-world terror experienced by the crew of the SS Ourang Medan, a situation with no real clear explanation. So let's consider some of the more rational explanations that have been proposed over the years. One theory is that the crew was exposed to toxic gases. It's speculated that the ship could have been transporting dangerous chemicals, possibly even chemical warfare agents that were left over from the war. A leak could have resulted in the release of deadly fumes causing the crew to suffocate, and it could explain why there were no visible wounds on the bodies, but it doesn't really quite account for the expressions of terror. Another theory involves carbon monoxide poisoning. A malfunctioning boiler or engine could have caused a buildup of carbon monoxide, the odourless and colourless gas that's actually notoriously deadly. This could also explain the lack of visible injuries and the twisted pained expressions, which could be a result of asphyxiation. Carbon monoxide poisoning can cause confusion, hallucinations, and intense anxiety, which might explain the frantic poses in which the bodies were found. And then there's the hazardous cargo theory. Some believe the SS Ourang Medan might have been involved in some dodgy capers, like smuggling potassium, cyanide, or nitroglycerin. These substances are pretty volatile, and if stored wrongly, they could easily lead to pretty nasty consequences. Crates full of unstable chemicals stacked in the bowels of ships, slowly leaking fumes into the air, with the crew unaware of the danger. They could have seriously been affected by the toxic environment, but also the explosion that took down the ship could have been triggered by the instability of these materials. The illegality of the operation may also explain why there are little to no records of its voyage. Nobody wanted to leave any evidence of the activities involved. But let's indulge ourselves for just one moment in the much more interesting supernatural hypothesis, because that's way more fun. The story of the SS Ourang Medan has the hallmarks of a maritime ghost story. A crew found dead under wacky circumstances, bodies twisted in terror, and no clear reason why. Some believe that the ship may have encountered something otherworldly, a ghostly presence, or a malevolent force that drove the crew to madness. It's the kind of story that leads into old sailor superstitions, sea monsters lurking beneath the waves, or vengeful spirits lost to the depths. And it's easy to see why this theory is fun and quite appealing. The ocean is inherently terrifying, its vastness and its blackness and its largely unexplored sparsity. The idea that something ancient and malevolent could rise up from the depths and claim an entire ship is pretty scary, and it plays into our fears of the unknown. It's this fear that Man of Medan taps into so effectively, with its ghostly apparitions and hallucinatory sequences that blur the line between reality and nightmare. And of course, we have to address the possibility, the very strong possibility, that the entire story of the SS Ourang Medan, the SS Ourang Medan, should I say, is nothing more than an urban legend or a ghost story. A cautionary tale passed down through sailors, becoming more embellished with each retelling. And here's the thing, whether the story is true or not, it almost doesn't really matter. It's the ambiguity, the not knowing that makes it so compelling. It's the kind of story that has just enough detail, just enough plausibility, that you can't completely dismiss it. And it's that uncertainty that makes it the perfect inspiration for a horror game. In Man of Medan, just like in the real-life legend, you're constantly questioning what's real and what's not. Is it all in your head? Is there something supernatural at play? The game never gives you a clear answer, and that's what makes it so effective. So, to wrap up, what can we take from all of this? Well, firstly, if you're ever invited to go on a ghost ship, probably just say you're busy that day. But more importantly for us, Man of Medan shows us just how powerful music can be in shaping our experience of horror. It's not just about scaring us, it's about creating an immersive atmosphere that lingers, making the feelings of the dread echo long after the music stops. The soundtrack is woven to manipulate our emotions, to keep us on edge, to make us question what's real and what's not. It's a great marriage of narrative and sound, and that's what makes Man of Medan such an effective horror experience. So, my brave explorers of the Eerie, what did you think of Man of Medan? Did these tracks make you feel the chill of the ghost ship, or did the salty waves of dissonance wash over you? Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, truly appreciate every listen, and if you like what you heard, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and maybe even leave a review. It helps more than you know, and it keeps us diving into these deep, dark waters together. Until next time, my brave and curious listeners, stay spooky and remember, the eeriest melodies are the ones that follow you home. Bye!